Okay, good morning. Thank you for joining us for the fifth and final day of Arts Week in Kentucky. We're happy to have you with us here today. We'll be presenting topics of interest to individual artists. We have two great presentations lined up for you this morning. Those of you who are with us in Zoom will be invited to use the chat when we near our time for question and answer sessions. Additionally, we are live streaming on Facebook and the comments section is being monitored there. So feel free to share your questions there in our Facebook feed and they'll be sent over to our presenters. Last, our session this morning is being live captioned on Zoom. So if you prefer to use that feature, you can turn it on at the bottom of your screen. Now I'm going to turn it over to our Executive Director, Chris Cathers, who is going to offer our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you, everybody. Welcome again to Arts Week, and we appreciate your participation. A land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes the unique and enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. Today, we stand on ground occupied by ancient peoples whose history has been lost, but whose legacy remains. The evidence of these ancient people can be seen all over Kentucky through the mounds and artifacts left behind. Today, over 170 American Indian tribes are represented by their members living and working in the Commonwealth. Let us honor those who were here and those who are here now, and build on the legacy of stewardship of the land that they left for us unto the 7th generation. And now I'd like to turn it over to David Blevins.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dave Blevins, Arts Marketing Director for the Kentucky Arts Council. Today, we will be focusing on individual artists, and we're going to start with two presentations, E-commerce for Artists by Melissa Oesch and Branding for Creatives by Jennifer Rice. We also have two in-studio demonstrations that will follow this morning's presentations. Those will kick off at 12:30 p.m., so stay tuned for that. For those of you who are watching via Facebook Live, you can post your questions there. Okay, so let's get started with our first presentation, which is E-commerce for Artists by Melissa Oesch.
Awesome. Hey, good morning, everybody. Let me just get my screen pulled up here. Hey, so my name's Melissa Oesch, and I am with Reimagined by Luna, and I make handmade leather goods, mostly hand-bound journals and sketchbooks, and I also make leather bags out of reclaimed leather. So what I'm going to do is just give you a little background on how I got started, and then we'll go through the presentation. At the end, we'll have a few minutes for questions. So if you have any questions come to mind along the way, just jot a little note on the side and we'll hopefully be able to get to all of those. So basically, I started my art business in 2008, and I started on Etsy. And I just started selling through there kind of on the side for a little bit. And then I went full-time in 2010. And that's when I created my website. And with my website, I basically redirected it to my Etsy store. So I was selling straight from Etsy and then just had my website directing to there. So if you go to the website, you would click shop and it would go to my Etsy store. So it was a nice, easy way in the beginning to just be able to sell online and not have to learn a whole lot of new things. Also in 2010, when I went full-time, I basically started doing every revenue stream possible. So I did online, I did wholesale, and then I also did in person. So I did a lot of art festivals, and I typically do 25 to 30 or so art shows a year before, everything paused. And then in 2011, I joined Kentucky Crafted. And in 2012, I added Indie Me, which is a wholesale online platform for artists. So, and we'll get into talking about the details of all of these. And then when 2020 happened, the first thing I did was I revamped my website and started selling directly from my website. So I started my first e-commerce store outside of Etsy. So that's kind of my background with selling online. So why is it important to have an online shopping platform? For one thing, people have been doing this for 20 years. Google started in 1998, and so people have just gotten really accustomed to shopping online. Also, shopping online is easy and convenient and quick. People's lives are full and they're largely trying to streamline what they're doing. Even before COVID hit, people were just trying to be more efficient with their shopping. And then when COVID did hit, it took shopping online to a whole new level. And what I have found is that people do really love art shows and they love making that connection in person, definitely, but they can't always buy everything that they would like to. And also we come to mind throughout the year otherwise, and they would like to go ahead and be able to buy from us then instead of having to wait a whole nother year to the next art show to see us, or however long it is. So if you have an online presence, they can go ahead and make a purchase from you. Maybe it's for Christmas or for a special birthday gift, and just something outside the art show. So I think it's really important that you have that option available for people. It also creates a wider audience. So when you are online, you are attracting not only the traffic that you're driving to your online store, but also people who are happening upon you and people who are doing Google searches and looking around online. They may just bump into you. So you end up with a wider audience than you would otherwise. And yeah, while many of us prefer meeting in person, our customers don't always have easy access to us, and we still need to be selling and they want to be buying. So the best way to be doing that is to have an online store. Okay, so where do I start? And I'm gonna go through this list quickly and then we'll break down all the details. So the first thing that you wanna do is you wanna choose a platform. So that means that you're gonna decide what avenue that you want to choose to sell online. The next thing you're gonna do is take really good photos, because this is what is actually going to sell your work. It's what is gonna capture people's attention when they see your work online. And you wanna use really descriptive words. So you're gonna use a really descriptive title, a really descriptive good description in your product description when you're describing what it is, anything that any customer would want to ask you about. And then you'll also, on every platform, there is a place for keywords where you can actually put in one word things that would describe your item. And I'll break down that a little more too. But you want to spread the word. So like I said, you're going to want to be driving traffic to yourself. You're going to want to promote yourself. And then once the order sells, you will fulfill the order. And the most important thing is just to start and not delay. I feel like I have talked to many artists over the years who are resistant to selling online, or they'd rather just sell to people in person at shows. It just feels easier. And in some ways it is, but we also have to take into account all of the work that goes into preparing for shows, the day before, the day after, and all the time that that involves, and also the expense. So there's a lot of benefits to selling online, especially once you set it up. That's like the hardest part. And once you establish your platform, then you're able to just kind of update it and keep up with it. And if you can just start, that's the biggest thing. So life always begins with one step outside of your comfort zone. And for me, when I went full-time in 2010, I was kind of resistant to selling online. I was on Etsy, but I knew I needed a website and I knew I needed to be working it more, but I preferred, of course, meeting in person. And I didn't have money to pay anyone to do a website at the time. So basically, I just had to decide to do it, to figure it out anyway. And I think sometimes as artists, we think that we can only be creative in certain ways, which is odd because other people think that we think outside the box with stuff. But I have found for myself and for others I know that sometimes we limit ourselves in odd ways. So if you can just see it as another way to be creative and something else to figure out, then you can do it. And like the website that I went with, Squarespace, I found to be incredibly intuitive. And I just decided to take the time and just start. And if you can just start, honestly, that is just the biggest step. The rest of it, you'll easily be able to figure out as you go along. Okay, so we are going to start with figuring out a platform, and I'm going to tell you about the ones I use and why, and then I'm just going to list a couple other options that maybe you would be interested in doing more research on. So I started with Etsy, and the way Etsy works is every time that you list an item or when you renew an item, it costs 20 cents. An item will stay listed for 3 months, and if it doesn't sell, then you have to renew it if you want it to be available for customers to buy again. And Etsy also takes 5% on each sale. So something new that they added in the past year or year and a half is that if you they've started doing these offsite ads. So if you get a sale from one of those offsite ads, then they will take 15% instead of the 5%. As far as I can tell, that is not something that you can opt out of. So something that you must do also is make sure that you list and renew items often in order to be found in the search results. So my experience with Etsy has been, in the beginning, remember I started in 2008, it was really good, and it got really good for a while, and then in about 2007, it started kind of going downhill, and I found that they had changed some of the ways that the search results worked, and they also had been so inundated by other makers from all over the world that it started getting harder and harder for people to find my work. I have mixed feelings about Etsy. I actually just talked with an artist earlier this week who had really good success on Etsy last year. So I don't think that it should be written off, especially if you are just trying to start and you need something that is just very basic and easy to figure out. I think Etsy is a really good place to do that. And I do know artists who are still selling just from Etsy, so it must be working for them. But in my experience, I felt like they started being less on the side of the maker. And the other thing is that when people go to your page on Etsy, Etsy will show them other products that are similar to yours, where people can click on that picture and go end up in someone else's store. So like I sell journals, and then at the bottom, they've got other people's journals that people can click on. So one thing I like about having my own website is when people go for my product, they are only going to see my product, and they're not going to be drawn away. So like I said, a pro, it's a nice, easy way to start selling online. And one of the big cons for me is that people are going to get pulled away from your page because they're going to see other products, and they may not be able to find their way back to you. So, and the pictures at the bottom are just a quick snapshot of what the Etsy website looks like. And basically every store essentially looks the same. You've got your product, your list of the categories on the left side. So my website that I go with is Squarespace, and I pay $312 per year for the basic commerce plan. So I pay a flat fee for the website. I'm not paying to list. It doesn't matter how many items I have up there. I can do whatever I want with all of that. So I drive customers to my site through my business cards, which, like I said, I do a lot of shows, so I give out a lot of cards. And then also I do a lot with social media, and I send out a email newsletter several times a year. And then also people are finding me in other searches, but I would say most people are finding me through business cards and social media. One of the pros to Squarespace that I found is that, like I said, it's pretty intuitive. They also have a lot of how-to videos for initially setting it up, and their customer service is incredible. You send them an email and they get back to you within 24 hours, and then that person keeps emailing you until you get the problem worked out. So even if it's like a tiny thing, like, you know, if I want a picture to be a little smaller and I couldn't quite figure out how to scoot it in, they'll work with you until you get those kind of details navigated. The biggest con with setting up a website is the time that it takes. So when I first set up Squarespace initially, I had never done any website before, and it took me a solid month to get the website up. And that is back when I redirected it to my Etsy store. So like I said, you click on shop and then it would take you to my Etsy store and then you would purchase from there. When 2020 happened, I ended up having to revamp my whole website because it was so outdated that it wouldn't support an e-commerce store. And so I redid the whole thing, added the store, and that took me a week. But I worked long days in that week trying to get it done because I knew whatever was happening with the pandemic, that having an online store was incredibly important. And I think that just keeps becoming the case because people are more comfortable than ever ordering online. So it's really important that we give them that option, especially as artists right now. Okay, so other retail platforms, there's Amazon Handmade. They take 15% per sale. So for example, if you make $200 a month, you'll pay $30 a month in fees, and that's $360 per year, just to give you an idea. So we're working per year with most of these when you are comparing them. I signed up for Amazon Handmade, and then I just kept reading more reviews about it and decided not to do it. One, I felt like they charged a lot, and two, I was reading about artists getting their work stolen and people making purchases and then sending their items to China and having them mass produced. So totally up to you. Maybe some people have had a good experience with it, but I just decided to stay away. I know a lot of people use Wix for their website. That's $276 per year. That's for the basic business plan. So that's with the online store. And then WordPress is another option. For their e-commerce plan, it's $540 per year. But I have a friend who's been using WordPress for an online store, and I don't think they're paying that much. So I'm not quite sure how they're getting around that. But I actually helped them set up their store on WordPress, and it was a nightmare and not very intuitive. So maybe other people know how to do that one, but I would stay away. I thought it was just difficult and everything was more cumbersome than it needed to be. So that's just my personal experience with WordPress setting up an e-commerce store. Now you can use any of these, well, the Wix or the WordPress, and just do a website and redirect that to your Etsy shop. And then you're not going to be charged nearly as much. Most of these fees come in when you have your e-commerce store directly on your website. Another one that I've heard about, but I don't know as much about, is Artful Home. And basically that sounds like an online gallery for artists. So they basically take 50%. So it's like doing wholesale with them. There is a $300 one-time membership fee. And I've been seeing mixed reviews online from artists as to whether or not it was worth it to them. Some people were really into it and some people weren't. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting and worth at least putting on your radar. Okay, so excuse me, wholesale platform options. I use IndieMe. They used to be called Wholesale Crafts. I've been with them for almost 10 years. They charge $468 a year. And I just kind of see it as a booth fee. It's about the cost of a lot of my art show booth fees, and it has been worth it to me. They do a $20 application fee, but once you're approved, they will do a free ad, which is the equivalent of $20. So that's kind of a non-issue. But one thing I found with IndieMe is that there are a lot of galleries from all over the country there that have found me that would have not found me otherwise. And then I found that a lot of people, a lot of gallery owners who use IndieMe really like placing their orders from there because it's a way for them to keep it nice and orderly and know who they've paid and who they still owe money to. And they just like the layout of it. So one of the reasons that I've kept it, especially in the past few years, is just for the sake of my regular buyers who I know just appreciate that particular platform. And I do get new buyers on there too. And I also could be doing more things to get new buyers. I've just had my energy directed elsewhere, but they do have good opportunities for advertising. I did one of their wholesale shows with them back in 2013 down in Florida. That was in person. But last year they started doing a virtual wholesale show. And I think they've done 2 or maybe 3 so far. And I have not participated, but I've been watching what happens. And the artists have been very pleased with the results and the amount of orders that they're getting from them. So I will likely try one of their virtual shows soon. Yeah, I think they're doing a good job with it. The other thing I really like about IndieMe is that the people who run it will straight up call you and ask what they can do to help you improve it, or what you would like to be what you would like to see happen more, and they try to figure out how to make that happen for you. I mean, you can also call them at any point. So they've just been really great to work with. Make sure I'm not missing anything here. The other one that a lot of artists are using is Fair. I am not on Fair. I don't have personal experience with Fair, but I just did some research on seeing what different people are saying about it. Fair takes 25% on an opening order, and then so on any new order, and then on every repeat order, they would take 15%. So remember, this is for wholesale. So typical wholesale is already 50-50. So if they're taking 25% on opening orders, that's 75% of your retail price that's already gone. So you're only making a 25% amount on your item. And maybe for some people's products that works, maybe you have enough wiggle room with your profit to do that. My numbers are a lot tighter than that. So that sounds like a lot for me. But like I said, we're all doing different stuff and working with different numbers. But the feedback that I was seeing online was kind of extreme. So there was a whole group of artists who praised Fair and said that they were selling a lot on there and that they really liked the forum and that the 25% was worth it to them because of all the orders that they were getting. And then there were people on the other extreme that were saying it's far too high. I don't have any contact with my actual buyers, which is one of the things that they like about wholesale, is making that relationship with their stores, which I would agree with that. So that might be something you would just want to research a little further before jumping into, but I wanted to at least make you aware of it. Okay, so do's and don'ts. Do take good pictures. Like I said, this is incredibly important. It's what sells your product. You can have somebody else take photos for you, or you can do it yourself. I bought a nice camera 10 years ago, and it's still the same one that I use, and I use super basic editing. But I paid people to take pictures for me a few times, and what I found was that they didn't capture quite the parts of the product that I felt like my customers needed to see in order to make the purchase. So product photography is different than just photography. And so if you are working with somebody, you want to make sure that they know how to do that. Yeah, and just think about, you put yourself in the customer's shoes. What would you want to know? What would you want to see about this piece before you buy it? And also talking about descriptive words, like what would you want to know as a customer? What does it feel like? What does it look like? What kind of red? Is it dark? Is it bright? Just like really describe what it is. And another thing that will do is it'll help take care of too many unnecessary emails with questions that you should have probably already answered in your description. And not that everybody already reads it, and you'll still get some of those, but it at least helps streamline your process a little bit. You do want to use really good keywords in your product description and the title. because both of those are going to show up in search engines. And then also like your tags that I was talking about before are really important. So like for my journals, I would put leather, paper, handbound, all of those individual ones. And like on Etsy, you can use up to 13 of those. On your website, you can use as many as you want, but I would use, at least 10 to 12 keywords, because those are the things that are going to show up with Google and other search engines when people are looking for handmade products. So CEO is something we can do a whole hour on, but basically the platforms that I've talked about today, they have that worked into the back end of it. So if you are using good product description and good keywords, then the way the platforms work, they're going to already work that into your search engine optimization, so that when people are doing searches, they're going to be finding your work. But you just want to make sure that you're doing your part with all of your keywords. And again, pay attention to detail. What would you want to know about it if you were the person that was buying it? Spread the word, hand out business cards. Even if I get in conversations in random places with people, I'll give out business cards, because you just never know, or maybe they know a family member who would be interested in what you sell, or the custom pieces that you do, or whatever. Definitely use social media. I think email newsletter is an easy way to drive traffic to your website and to your social media. And then there's other advertising. I don't do a ton of paid advertising, but I really like the Kentucky Arts Council because I get advertising through them. So like interviews, radio, TV, newspaper, those kinds of things will also help drive traffic to your online store. You want to update your shop. You don't want it to get too stale. And you want to make sure that there's enough things for people to choose from. So you're not just down to like 3 products. If you walked into an in-person store, you wouldn't want just 3 options. You would want to see, a dozen or whatever. So think about creating a space for people to come into online, where they get choices and they can pick from things that they like and see enough variety to pique different interests depending on, the different people that are going to be coming and checking out your stuff. So this might seem like an obvious don't sell the same piece in 2 places, but I have done this several times. I now keep my inventory that I sell online separate from the inventory that I have like at art shows or that I have available for wholesale. So I have one whole shelf that is just for my online store. And before I had enough inventory to do that, I would take inventory to an art show, and I would just have it marked on the tag that it was also, online. And then sure enough, I'd sell it at the art show sooner than I could get online and take it down. So it's just easier to keep that inventory separate. And don't not have an online store. It's really important, especially these days. Okay, so the next few slides, I'm just going to take you through and show you what customers see versus what the back end of something looks like. So this is what an Etsy store looks like when you click on a product. You see I've got all these pictures to the left that show different angles of the journal that people may be interested in. And then to the right, I wasn't able to capture it all in the photo, but you see there's a descriptive title, and then below it, below where the picture shows really is the description that tells more about the materials that I used and how I made it and what it's good for and how you can use it. So on Etsy, this is the back end that you would see. So this is when you go in and you work on it. And this shows you kind of the menu to the left that you have to work with. This shows you on the right, there's that big box at the top, which is the description that I type in. Always put your measurements of your product in. Sometimes when I look around on Etsy, I'm shocked at how few people do that, but people want to know, like, is it going to show up and like fit in my hand, or, is it going to be difficult to get through the door or whatever? People want to know what's going to be showing up. And then at the bottom of this if you look where it says tags, that's what I kept talking about with the descriptive words that you would add in. And you definitely want to take advantage of those. They say that they're optional, don't ever leave that blank. That's how you get found. Okay, and then for Squarespace, where I do my website, with your website, you can do your layout however you want. This picture, what you can't see is that if you keep scrolling down, I have more photos of the journal showing it all the different ways, showing it opened or partially opened. And then to the right is the description and the measurements. And then with Squarespace, this is the back end of what you would see. So you'll see all the different pictures to the left, my descriptive title, the price, and then if you look at the bottom, you'll see the tags, the keywords there. Again, you want to use a whole bunch of those. And then up at the top, you'll see item, pricing, and variants. And if you go across, you'll see where SEO is listed. And with Squarespace, when I fill in all of the descriptive words in the title, that SEO, if I click on that, it actually starts to put all of that information into the SEO. So I don't have to do anything more with that unless I want to, but it just starts building it when I just start doing the descriptive part myself. So, okay, so then you've created your online store, you've driven traffic to it, and something sells. So then what do? You, well, right before that, you want to make sure that you have your policies listed. So make sure that you list, whether it is your website or your Etsy store, you want to list your store policies. So have your shipping policies written down. So you want to say how many days that you'll ship within, and then do that. So give yourself enough time when you say it in the description that you'll do what you say you'll do. That's really important with just customer service in general. And then also I say who I use to ship. So I use the US Postal Service, and then I tell people that if they want to choose something else to let me know when they place the order. I've only had people choose something else probably 5 times in 12 years. People are generally fine with the post office, and I've had a really good experience with them. I've only had 2 packages lost in 12 years, which for the amount that I ship out, I feel like is really good. I also do international shipping with them and have had no problems with international shipping. I know that some artists, especially ceramic artists, will use UPS because you can get a bulk rate for heavier items. So my items aren't so heavy, so it's not as much of an issue for me, but that might be something you want to research. But communicate what you're doing to your customers so that they know and there aren't any questions or any surprises about any of that. Also, you'll want to list your refunds and exchange policy, and it's your store, so you get to decide if you do refunds and exchanges or what that looks like. I give people, I think, 7 days once it arrives to do an exchange, or they can do a refund if something happens to it in the mail. And then I refund any shipping overages, just because shipping has gone up so much in the past few years that some of my shipping is just listed a little bit higher so that I don't lose money, and then I just refund people if there's very much of a discrepancy there. Another thing that I would suggest is to find an online shipping service. So I use Shippo, which is under goshippo.com. And what that allows me to do is I can just weigh my item at home and print out a mailing label, and you can either have the post office, the postal service people can pick it up at your house, or you can just drop it off at the counter at the post office and not have to wait in line. I just have like a little food scale that I weigh my packages on, and then if I have a big box, I just straight up stand on my regular scale with the box and without it and subtract the difference. So I'm not super fancy with that, but I found that it makes things much more efficient if I just do all the mailing labels at home myself, and then I just drop it off at the post office. You can think about your presentation and how you want to package it. The picture on the right just shows what I do. I keep it pretty simple, but I at least do a little something just so people have an experience when, when they're opening it up to, and they can get kind of excited about unwrapping it, but that is totally up to you. And again, we all have different products, so it kind of just depends also on what you're selling. And the big thing again is just say what you're going to do and then do it. So it's just good customer service to just be communicative and follow through. Yeah, and then just an additional tip that I want to give you is if you are on Facebook, I would encourage you to join these two groups. Artists who online retail and artists who wholesale. And if you do wholesale at all, the artists who wholesale I found to be really helpful. A lot of times I don't even just go visit their page. If I go there, it is literally to search. And so I just use a little search bar, for example, and I put in fair because I wanted to see what artist feedback were on fair and what people's experiences were, whether they suggested it or said to stay away. And then artists who online retail are actually, they were started by people who were from artists who wholesale, and we're just wanting to expand to helping each other with retail online as well. So those people are pretty active, and also you're getting a variety of experience levels. So you can, if you have experience and you want to help people, this is a good way to do that. Or if you're just wanting to see, if people have experience with certain platforms that you haven't tried yet, that it's a good place to go as well. So I would encourage you to join both of those. Yeah, and actually I am ready for any questions that people may have. I don't know if we've opened up the chat yet for people to ask questions.
Thanks, Melissa. We're gonna get that chat opened up and see if we have any questions for you. All right, the chat is opened up right now.
Yeah, what I feel like I found with most artists is just not really wanting to sell online. So, and I think it's okay to just kind of also flow with whatever is going on in the rest of your year. So there's certain times of the year that I will focus more on my online sales. And then, when I'm really busy with art shows, I do let my online store get stale and I don't have time to keep up with it as much. And it's okay to kind of flow with what you need with that too. But I think the most important thing is to have that option.
Okay, so first question from Crystal in the chat. When would you actually start selling products? How many products / quantity of products should you have prepared? So kind of two questions there in one.
Okay, so when should you start? That was the first part?
When did you start selling products? Yes.
You should start.
How many in quantity?
Okay, you should start selling your products online right now. If you have any made, go ahead and set up an online store and start selling them. I wouldn't wait on that. And I think ideally you would start with at least 10 to 12 to give people options, but honestly, it's kind of just it takes a little effort in the beginning to set up your store. So even if you only have like 5 pieces, just go ahead and set up your store, and then you can start adding product to it as you get it made. I usually tend to add, 5 to 10 at a time because I like to do things in batches, just because I like being efficient with my time. But if you're doing one thing at a time every few days, do whatever works for you. But the main thing is just to start doing it.
Actually, this one comes from Facebook. I'm curious what % of your time is spent doing shows and managing websites and other marketing related activities versus actual production of product?
Oh, that's a good question. Most of my time is made producing product, but it really depends also on the time of year. So I tend to do most of my art shows from April until the middle of June. And I spend January through March building inventory. And then I spend middle of June until like early September building inventory again and doing a lot of art shows from September through December. My website, I usually have on my to-do list for weeks before I get to it, but I try to keep that updated. Well, I update it anytime that I'm adding a show or any kind of new information like that. But as far as actual online updates, before 2020, I would say I updated it about 4 times a year. And now I'm trying to do it, you know, ideally every 6 to 8 weeks. Some people would say to do it far more often than that, but you know, making stuff is really time intensive. So I think for artists, it's harder to do like a weekly or even monthly update. So I think the main thing is just do it and don't get too hung up on how often you do it. Just get started.
Great. Another question from the chat. Is there a fee for the shipping service that you use, or what is the fee, I guess?
A good question. Yeah, they do not take a fee, but they actually give you a little price break. It's not a whole lot less than if you were just paying directly at the post office, but I think they're somehow able to just create a price break, but I don't pay any kind of monthly fees. I try to keep monthly fees to a minimum.
Again, from chat, what advice would you give to an artist starting a business right now that doesn't have the financial backing in the beginning?
I would definitely start on Etsy because it doesn't cost much to start there. You can always build a website or do something else later, but I would say for the first couple of years, I just used my Etsy store without even a website that could redirect to it. So start there. The main thing with Etsy that is really important is you have to renew your items often, or you get, every time you renew an item or you list a new item, it pushes you to the top of the search results. And then as everyone else is adding new stuff, you're getting pushed down and down and down. So even if you have 12 items and they're not selling, go ahead and renew it. So like for a while, I was budgeting maybe $5 a week, you know, at 20 cents per product to renew them every week so that I would keep myself up in the search results so people could actually find me.
Question from Facebook. Let's see. Actually, I'm sorry, this is from the chat. And questions about wholesale. I'm just now getting into wholesale. Have you offered wholesale to local stores in your area? And what was your experience? Or have you had better luck using the IndieMe site, which is a e-commerce wholesale platform? That's a good question because I know that IndieMe did a virtual show, I think, within the last 2 weeks. So if you want to talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, so yeah, I've been doing wholesale since 2010, and for me, it's been important to try every option available because I need to pay my bills. So I definitely sell to local stores. They are who I started with, and I would do cold calls, which is pretty old school and basically means you show up with your product and like, hey, you want to check out my stuff and maybe buy it. And I found that people don't love that approach anymore. They would prefer that you call and set up an appointment, and then you can show up and, you know, show your stuff when they have their mind clear and they can think about what they want to purchase from you. So I would definitely encourage you to do that with local stores. And also, you know, pay attention to where other artists are selling. So if you see there's a lot of artists selling at Artique and they talk about that, contact Artique or the Artisan Center or other places that especially really want to promote artists, and you see other artists selling, go ahead and contact them and ask if they're open to, you know, new baskets or whatever it is that you do. With IndieMe, they have been beneficial to getting me out in like a wider audience as far as like around the country, to galleries that I wouldn't have otherwise. Most of my wholesale sales are still, I would say, largely from Honestly, they're largely from people that I met through the Kentucky Crafted the Market. Maybe even as many as 2/3 are. So it's important. It has been helpful to have the online store with Indie Me, and I think that the virtual show, I think they are doing a really good job with that. And like I said, I have not done it yet, but I probably will, and I'm seeing really good feedback. But if you go into the Artists Who Wholesale on that Facebook group, and in the search, you just type in Indie Me, like all the recent comments about Indie Me are about that, those virtual shows and people's experiences with that. So hopefully that helped.
Great. Another question. Do you have advice for taking product shots? You covered that a little bit, and I'm guessing the question is taking them yourself rather than hiring someone to do that for you.
Yeah, so I'm pretty simple with how I take my photos. I, for the longest time, just straight up had a table that was near a window that got good light, and just straight up a white sheet as my background. I like to keep the background clean so that people can just see the product. You can do other stuff that looks cool for social media, but when you're trying to sell your piece, I think it's important to not distract people. And then just make sure that you get all the different angles. Like if somebody is picking up your product, or if they're walking around it at a show or in person, what are they looking for? What do they want to see? Is there this one part where the paint, all these colors come together? Maybe they want to see that corner more up close. So you'll take several pictures of further away from the product so you can see all of it. And then you want to do stuff that's going to focus on the details of it as well. And again, I just perused other people's websites and Etsy and saw what photos I was drawn to and how people were showing off their work, and was like, okay, this is what people are wanting to see in order to be able to sell it. So.
Yeah, and I think that was a good point you made about making sure you're highlighting the work itself. And I think one of the mistakes I see sometimes is when someone has a product image and there's a lot going on within that image, they've curated a background or a setting and things like that, which a lot of the times that looks good, but you want to make sure that that doesn't become the focal point.
Yeah.
That draws your eye rather than the work. And I think that's really important for getting wholesale buyers on board, is they want to see the work itself rather than, a work within a setting.
Exactly.
Okay, let's see here. Another question from the chat. We know you are very active on social media. Can you tell us a little bit more about how, or if you use social media to drive your e-commerce? And that'll kind of dovetail into our next presentation. So that's a good question.
Yeah, the marketing one may talk about that a little more, but basically I've used it a variety of ways. Like I have, especially when I did Etsy, I would straight up just put one of my products, I would list it on Facebook. So if people would click on the photo, it would take you straight to my product. Now I tend to do more of showing off different pieces, and then letting people know that it's available online. Or for me right now, where I'm juggling, I have a booth space in town, and then I also am getting ready for different shows and filling wholesale orders. I don't have as many pieces in my online store right now as I would like. And so I also let people know that they can always just comment or email me if they want to see more variety or a different kind of thing. But anytime I post like an update in my store where I put a whole bunch of new pieces in there, I would definitely let people know on social media to go over and check it out and have first dibs. So.
Okay. We've got a few more minutes for Q&A. Next question is, any advice for selling large or high budget pieces? Platforms of advertising, etc. Are those just better to be sold in person?
That's a good question. I almost feel like you need to talk to another artist who does really big pieces. What I see a variety of things. I see people are still using Etsy and their website to sell on. And I see some artists who you just have to account for your time when you are packaging it, and know what the shipping is, so you're charging the right amount of shipping. And there are people who are selling furniture that way, or sculptures. If you're willing to go to the effort of packaging up something large like that. And then I see other artists who say, they'll sell it online, but it has to be within a 2-hour drive, or you'll meet someone within 2 hours. And because it's your store, you can kind of do it however you want. You can also just try things and see what works for you. But yeah, the large pieces, you do have to take more of that shipping part into account. And there are customers who are willing to pay for that. Then it would just be a matter of making sure that you're able to target that audience. So your keywords, and making sure that people can find you when they're searching for those things would be really important.
Yeah, and I think making sure that the work is properly insured if it's going to be shipped is extremely important.
Yes, good point.
Question from the chat: does the website like Squarespace have its own e-commerce, or do you have to find that and incorporate that into your website for purchases? Good question.
Yeah, so with Squarespace, I meant to say that, so thank you for asking that. With Squarespace, they have the e-commerce store set up. They prefer that you work with Stripe, or I think they listed one other thing, and when I did the research, I decided to go with Stripe. It's the only thing that I use Stripe for. But basically, it kind of works the same way PayPal does. I kind of wish they would have given that option, but anyway, you make your purchase. Now Stripe does take out the credit card expense that you're going to get anywhere, and then they will automatically send your funds over to you. So, but the actual template for the store, the e-commerce store, is already set up. You just have to set up a Stripe account and connect everything. So it's not too difficult.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. This comes from Karen in the chat. Could you say a little more about how you track your inventory?
I put them on different shelves. I keep it pretty simple. So I have like a bookshelf with my journals and bags that are for that are in my online store and are not to be touched unless they sell. And then I have my other shelves with my books and bags that are available for wholesale or going to an art show or in process. So yeah, I keep things as simple as possible and yeah, efficient. So
Great. Let's see here. Maybe one more. From a question from Facebook. How often do you check with your wholesale buyers to see if they want more product, or do you wait for them to contact you? I think I know the answer to that.
Yeah, that's a good question. With wholesale, it's nice when they contact you, but that doesn't always happen. I also have an e-newsletter just for my wholesale buyers, and I send that out at least twice a year. So in January and then before the fall, so they can do their early and then Christmas shopping. And then with certain stores, especially ones that order more frequently, if I haven't heard from them, I go ahead and reach out and just check either by calling or emailing just to see if they're ready. A piece of feedback I received from a buyer last year when we didn't have Kentucky Crafted the Market, they just said how much they missed getting to see all the new artists and how they really wished that artists would reach out to them to place reorders because they couldn't even remember everybody that they wanted to get in touch with. And I thought that was important to be reminded of, that they want to hear from us. I think sometimes we get busy or we don't want to bother them, or at least sometimes that's how I feel, but they want to hear from us. So feel free to initiate contact with them and see if they're ready to place another order with you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Melissa. That was fantastic. I had some great questions from the chat and Facebook, and we appreciate your time.